Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me. And today my guest is the wonderful Melanie Reinhart. Hello, Melanie.
Hi, Anna. It's always so good to have a conversation with you. I've been really looking forward to it.
Me too. Me too. And what prompted this particular conversation is that I have been going through some Chariklo squares to my Venus, and I hadn't realized. And then I was teaching, and suddenly I realized I was going through charcoal squares to my Venus, which have been magical. And I thought, I've got to tell Melanie. So I wrote to you a very long email. And here we are talking about Chariklo again. So she is, I think, without a doubt, my favorite of the astrological pantheon that we work with. So
Mm.
I'm just going to let you tell us more about what you're seeing with Chariklo at the moment.
Okay. Well, if I may, I'd like to just repeat the little story that I mentioned both in my email to you and when we were talking beforehand. You know, when I was writing the book on Chiron, the research was done, began pretty much as soon as the ephemeris were out for Chiron. And then I did, years and years of research. I have to say, never intending to write a book. That never occurred to me. But of course, Chariklo wasn't yet discovered. Um, it was 20 years 20 years after Chiron was discovered, along came Chariklo. And I suddenly realized that when Chariklo when she during that time, Chariklo was very active by transit onto my chart, and during the time that I was writing my book, she basically went through in quick succession a whole string of conjunctions to all the major planets on my chart. I couldn't believe it, and I couldn't help feeling like, wow, I think she really helped me to write the book because it is rather large. And when I look back now, I sort of wonder how on earth did I ever do that. But I think I had some help.
Wow. Every time, I hear this is, you wrote to me and I just heard you tell the story and you're telling it again. And each time it just goes, ooh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I love it that I didn't know about that because I think that would have altered the experience completely. And in a way, that is very Chariklo anyway. An energy which, in some ways, can work quietly in the background, but powerfully in the background as well. You know. Um,
Very, I was just thinking that's very yin, actually.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I noticed that, well, the discovery chart for Chariklo is utterly magnificent. I actually have some slides, so I'll show you in a minute. But what I realized recently was because there's a very exact six-pointed star figure in that horoscope of her discovery. I mean, it's a six-pointed star, but there's even more than six planets exactly in 6+ degrees in an exact six-pointed star. So almost everything in the chart is taken up into this six-pointed star. And that's a geometric figure that itself has a whole lot of connections and associations. But what I realized is, okay, that six-pointed star will inevitably be linking compatible elements alternatively all the way around the charts. And in the case of Chariklo's chart, it's all the air signs and all the fire signs. In other words, all the yang signs. And there's two singletons, one in water and one in earth. Now, a singleton is a very interesting phenomenon in a chart. In the life of a person, to have a singleton in one of the elements, that doesn't mean that that element is kind of weak. You know, it's not like mechanical numbering that we do when we're assessing things in a horoscope. It's not like it's weak. It's that it's hugely emphasized, in fact, almost as if whatever element it is only has that one channel to flow in. And so there's an enormous sense of power and even pressure that goes with that. And often in somebody's life, if they've got a singleton, you'll see that written all over their life. It's unmistakable. And even if it has some sense of discomfort and pressure and so forth, it's hugely, it's got this destinal feeling. It's like you have to do this, almost as a way of keeping balance with the rest. So in the case of Chariklo, she's got two singletons. It's Chiron in Scorpio and it's Neptune in Capricorn. So Chiron in Scorpio is like the deep waters, and Neptune in Capricorn is like the sacred earth. So how I read that is when the whole whirlwind of air and fire kicks off, which, hey, one could think of the current times, okay? When all that kicks off, it's like we're shown places to go is into the deep waters and home to the sacred earth. That's how I read that. And I just find that very inspiring, because in the very structure of her discovery chart, it's almost like there's some guidance, there's some advice there for us. And also anyone out there, if you've got a lot of planets in your chart placed in air signs and fire signs, well, it can be a bit of a maelstrom or a fire wind or a tornado at times, kind of wearing on the nervous system, deeply inspiring and very exciting sometimes, but rough on the nervous system. And so any of you who've got that kind of shaping on your horoscope with lots of air and fire, well, you will be very much in tune with these times, because we do have a very particular kind of trine, which is sometimes called a minor trine, where the three outer planets are either trine or sextile each other. And because all of them have either recently or will soon change their signs, they're all going to be in air and fire. And so suddenly realized, oh my God, what that means is over the next few years, one or other of those powerful outer planets will be queuing in to the horoscope of Chariklo's discovery and kind of pinging on one or other of those 6 points on the 6-pointed star. Now, if you have a very exact pattern on your horoscope, as is the case here, when one of those points on the 6-pointed star gets a big transit, the whole pattern is set resonating Now, an analogy for this that I absolutely love is from Dane Rudhyar, sometimes called the founder of modern astrology. And he likens the planets to gongs in the celestial orchestra, okay? And when I read that, it's in his books. It's in his book, New Mansions for New Men. Magnificent. But when I read that, I suddenly thought, oh, it's like, then a transit is like somebody walking past and ringing the gong. So a transit is like our gongs are being rung. And if we have a whole lot of gongs that are all connected, well, the whole lot will sing. And so when I show you the presentation, it includes a link where you can download the information as to when those activations happen. But, you know, to be honest, when I'm looking at the list here, we get a sprinkling of them next year, January, April, August, October. That's kind of feels kind of manageable, although I shouldn't really say that too loud. Then in 2027, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 exact activations. And so pretty much in either of those times, we could consider the whole of the year. Because, you know, I've only written down the dates on which those aspects are 100% exact. But of course, they will have an orb. They will approach the exact point and then also leave it. And if we include that, then the whole of the next few years, up to 2029, is covered with those aspects onto the chart of Chariklo. So any way you look at that, it's a major activation, a major stimulation of what she stands for in the world of minor planets and so forth. And then there's a little gap, and the same theme picks up in 2032. So 2027 is the year with the most exact activations. And predictably, it goes in sequence. You know, first are all the Uranus transits, and then Neptune gets added in, and then Pluto also gets added in. So it goes Uranus, bit of Neptune, then more Neptune, bit of Pluto, and then eventually it's only Pluto. So it's really amazing thing. And I personally was so excited when I saw that, because, you know, we are in times where there are a lot of doommongers out there. And there are also a lot of very shocking and trying things going on, like everywhere. And with our very hyper-connected world, you know, when we imbibe the news, at some level, our system doesn't differentiate as to whether something is really happening or not, like right here in the room, because it's the emotional reaction that we understandably have. That's what registers. And so from one point of view, it makes sense to be somewhat frugal at times about how much of that mental and visual stimulation you allow into your system. And that's not the same as being in denial. It's just maybe having some kind of Chariklo wisdom when there's the whole maelstrom and cyclone of air and fire stirring up everything all over the planet 24/7. Well, we may need to take refuge in the earth and in the water. So whatever that means to you, you can say a little prayer of thanks to Chariklo for bringing that into such a focus for us during these times. It's like this is the recipe for healing overwhelm, which is, risk. That's a high risk at the moment. So any of you out there who are new to Chariklo, she was the wife of Chiron. And, compared to some of the mythical figures, there's very little in the usual classical sources about her, which is quite wonderful because I think of that as part of the symbolism. So we don't know a whole lot cognitively. We don't have a lot of information about Chariklo, but if you just think about her story a little bit, it really starts to speak. And of course, in the absence of a well-formed, often repeated story about her, well, that means that we're free to allow our own imagination to fill the gaps so we can have our own version of what the story is like based on our own experience. So she began her life as a water nymph. And we're not told, at least I've never come across a classical source which tells this, like how come she got to be the wife of Chiron? Did she undergo a shapeshift? Or was it like a cross-species mating? We don't know that. Now, a water nymph is not a human being. It's almost like a pre-incarnate or a yet-to-be incarnated soul kind of thing. And so the connection with that sort of realm, which of course we all have in our soul, is very strong with Chariklo. But she was also at the same time no elusive little wispy, not incarnated little creature, because she was the wife of Chiron. And I first got really intrigued with her, just with the question of, well, we know that Chiron received a wound accidentally inflicted by his student, Hercules. And we know that Chiron was already known as a great healer and wise man and so forth. And we also know that he continued his practice of service to the human people and the heroes. And also, we don't quite know what happened to Chariklo when Chiron died or transcended to become his starry self in the constellation of Centaurus. So what happened to Chariklo? Did she go back home to the waters? Did she eventually join him in the stars? I mean, wow, such food, nourishment for the imagination. It's just wonderful. And then also, think about it. If Chiron was so wounded and in so much pain, and still doing his vocation of healing and so forth, you have to wonder, well, how did he manage? So I like to imagine that Chariklo was looking after him and making it possible for him to not only continue in his vocation of service, but for his soul to also mature to the point where he was able to transcend. And I even like to think that the relationship between them took the form of a very particular kind of exchange. almost as of course can happen in real life couples, that they each become more like the other one, perhaps. So I can't help seeing them as two parts of a whole, or as a complementary pair in terms of the process of awakening and healing. Chariklo certainly holds the yin aspect of all that. And Chiron is more yang, out there in society, in the world, the mentor of many of the Greek heroes and so forth, and engaging in the struggle to heal himself, which was ultimately unsuccessful. And that has huge teachings in it, just there, So I do see them as very much part of one thing. And the name of Chariklo is wonderfully evocative. I believe her name translates from the Greek into a phrase like graceful spinner. Now, playing with the words, which I love to do because I'm a Gemini, okay, that also looks like, feels like graceful spinner, spinning grace. And so what I've noticed in my own life and with friends and clients is there can be very powerful processes which quietly go on inside us, where things can get very dark and very tangled. And then sometimes Chariklo will be like an agent of unspinning, untangling in that kind of sense. So spinning as creating something, spinning, of course, as like a spinning top or a spiral, like in the strand of DNA. There's many ways in which the circularity and the spirality of the notion of spinning is very evocative here. And so that sense of untangling also goes with it, and it can be very powerful. Now, Chariklo at the moment is in the sign of Aquarius. Absolutely amazing. Aquarius is the third one of the air signs. And from that point of view, the Aquarian journey consists of the gift or the aspiration of attaining a position of clarity that has a certain amount of detachment in it. But this is not detachment as in split off from one's feelings. It's the kind of detachment that enables us to be fully present at all levels of what's going on and not tangled up in it at the same time. And to me, this is the vibe of Chariklo in Aquarius. So that kind of consciousness and kind of connecting into it seems to be very present at the moment. So a huge gift in all sorts of ways. You might find yourself having occasional little blips that are not huge and dramatic and disrupting and all that, because Chariklo, remember, she orbits exactly between Saturn and Uranus. So unlike her husband Chiron, she doesn't go through anybody else's orbits. Wonderful symbolism. She just nestles right in between them. So she doesn't have to like crash over somebody's orbit or make a big drama or disrupt anything in order to convey her teachings, so to speak. It's kind of quiet and contained. And yet we know that Chariklo, we know from the ancient sources that Chariklo was like a co-mentor with Chiron of many of the ancient Greek heroes and some of the centaurs. So she was no shrinking violet. She was there with her beloved Chiron, engaging with all this very yang energy, which is kind of amazing.
There's so many things that you've said that have made light bulbs go off all over my brain. Um, and, and I think, but the one that what you've just said right there, that they were together um, in mentoring the heroes. I think that is really important because we can say she represents divine feminine energy. So this is yin in the highest sense.
Yeah.
And reading about the life of Mother Mary and the old gospels, which have kind of been discarded and forgotten, which were testaments of the time also, it seems that they describe Mother Mary accompanying Jesus with Mary Magdalene also, and
Yes.
other women who were high priestesses. And what they were doing was helping by holding his energy. In other words, they were acting like batteries,
Yes.
so that all of them together were generating extraordinary energy. And I think that that image is so powerful to me. When I first read that, I had to really stop and think.
Yes. Yes.
It really struck me as phenomenal. And I can see how that would be the case, because anyone who has sat in a mediumship circle or a healing circle of any kind will recognize that all of our energy fields together somehow help everything to be more powerful and smoother. So that, for instance, when people are first training in mediumship, it's a lot easier to work when you're in a circle. And it's not because you're, sucking other people's energy or anything like that. It's not like that at all. It's just that the energy is bigger and therefore
Yes.
easier to tap into. So I think that's an extraordinary thing. And the spinning, it's so interesting because I'm currently reading a book about the history of dreams as healing, going right back to Mesopotamia and through ancient Egypt, and coming in through ancient Greece. And there was a reference just last night. I came across this reference to spinning,
Mm.
and I remember again reading about how when Mary was preparing for the event that was to become the holding the spirit of Jesus coming into her body, that was also referred to as spinning. And
Yes.
it's, you could take it literally as spinning, but women span in order to
Yeah.
weave as well. So there's this
Yes.
double entendre here, where there's the spinning, as in spinning and thinking about the generating of energy through spinning, and the world,
Absolutely.
for instance,
Yes.
getting into that state of ecstasy. But
Absolutely.
and we know that dance is an important means of raising frequency. So the spinning and dancing
Yes.
that we associate with the dervishes, and then
Yes.
spinning, the spinning that leads to weaving and the creation of something, which I think both images are just so powerful. And listening to you, I was taken to all of that in just simultaneously and instantly.
Yes. Well, any of you out there who like to engage with what was traditionally thought of as women's craft, so tapestry, crochet, knitting, and sewing, but particularly ones where there is a kind of a rhythm that goes with it. So any of you out there who do that will know that when your hands are busy with something like that, it's actually quite easy to get into a very much altered state, very contemplative, very still, because there's a huge amount of concentration, but particular kind of concentration. It's not like fixation, but it's a smooth flow of energy from your intention through your mind, through your body via the fingers. And, you know, I think in the old stories like the Arthurian stories, one often sees a reference to a woman who's doing a tapestry or who is spinning. And in all the ancient stories, this crops up, not only because, back in the day, if you wanted to wear something, you had to make the cloth. Okay, it runs much deeper than that. And I remember there was a phase where in my work, I would, in between every client that I saw, I would sit and crochet. And when I was doing it just instinctively, I didn't even think about all of the historical or energetic components of it. It just seemed like that's what I wanted to do. And that was how I kind of processed what had happened in the session and grounded my own energy and so on and so forth.
A lot of good thinking goes on whilst I'm knitting and crocheting, it has to be said.
Exactly. So I'm just thrashing around a bit here because I want to show you. I'm actually sitting on the very blanket which I made.
Beautiful. That is gorgeous.
Absolutely enormous. So these are all, I used to do little bits, little squares, which felt kind of manageable. Then I had a whole sack full of these little tiny squares. I didn't know what to do with them. And I thought, oh, obviously you make a blanket. So I pinned them all to newspaper all over the floor and joined them all up, all these little bits.
Yeah.
And it was a period after my father had died. And the joining up of all the little bits felt so precious and important because it was like assembling memories
Do you
of
know,
my relationship with him, you know?
the most extraordinary thing is that I also made a blanket.
Oh,
And I made that blanket in a similar way to you. And it I gave it to my father, and he had it in the last 6 months before he passed.
wow.
And I will always remember, because they lived in Canada and I am here in England. And I will always remember that process of putting them all together and making sure that it was finished in time for the flight.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
there's the same
But I
process of spinning grace, huh?
exactly, and it's just, as you said that, I suddenly thought, wow, and this is such a yin thing, isn't it? Because it's that processing and translating, as you say, the energy going into the creation of something. And what did we both do with that something? It was both related to our fathers.
Yeah.
Mine, it was a gift that he had for the last 6 months of his life. And I remember giving it to him and it being replaced, or it replacing the blanket that he had. And when he received it, and this was now a time when he had very advanced Parkinson's, and his facial expressions were non existent virtually. And he wasn't quite present. There was a lot of hallucination that was going on. And in that moment, when he first got it, and I remember his carer saying to him, "So which one do you prefer? The old blanket or this one?" And for a moment, we kind of gasped because he pointed at the old one. And then I laughed so much because that was his sense of humor. And it showed me that this blanket had brought him back
Oh,
in that moment. And then he did something that was nothing short of a miracle at that moment in time. He managed to lift his arm enough to put it around me.
oh,
So when we're talking about the energy and that transfer of energy, this is an important point in our conversation because I think it is these experiences that epitomize the energy of Chariklo. And if we want to understand her, it's this is it.
yeah,
This is it.
yeah. You know, what you were saying about the blanket kind of accompanying your father in that very tender last part of his life. And so for me, it was a kind of similar thing, but I was accompanying my father's after death journey. I was very in touch with that for quite a long time after he died. And so that was very important too to me. And so the sense of being accompanied or accompanying people like birth doulas or death doulas, it's a hugely important archetypal activity that is in now the capacity to value that is increasing now. I mean, 20 years ago, you never really heard much about that, but it's becoming more and more known and more valued. And so also that leads into, what are the qualities within ourselves that we can accompany ourselves in aspects of our own journey. Because, it's wonderful to have soul friends and or soul group that can act as that crucially important holding space that is so much a part of what Chariklo does. And it's not even a doing, it's a being, you know. Um, and yet there are aspects of deep transitions which, almost by definition, we have to do that alone. And that's not about rejecting support. There's nothing pathological about it. It's just that's a particular aspect of our journey of awakening. And so this energy of feeling accompanied, that's a Chariklo kind of a feeling. And it is very natural because actually the whole of nature, right from the celestial realms with all the planets and everything, to the earthly realms, with all the plants and the animals and the rocks and the crystals and everything. So there's your six-pointed star. It's both the celestial realm, that's the upturned triangle, and also the earthly realms, kind of being unified, acting together. Because there's no right side up with a six-pointed star. You could, as it were, balance the figure on any one of those points, and it looks exactly the same, you know?
Yes. Yes, indeed. So now that we've really kind of honed in on the energy of Chariklo, how do you see her operating in terms of what's happening at the moment in relation to other planets?
Yeah, so what's interesting at the moment is relative to some of the very intense aspects that are coming and going all over the place. That's not happening with where Chariklo is placed. So she's about 20 degrees of Aquarius at the moment. And so not locked into some of the other major things that are going on. And I almost have a feeling that the position that she's in absolutely fits with this sense of the invisible accompaniment or the quietude behind all the uproar. And I love that. So it's almost like she's a little bit on her own, you know, in a place where she could easily be missed or sort of ridden over kind of thing, but there she is.
You mentioned some slides. Shall we have a
Yes, yes. So this is the discovery chart I was referring to. And just to say that this link on the bottom left, that's where you can download a list of all of the dates forthcoming when the chart of Chariklo will be activated. So if you'd like to have that information, click on that and it'll take you through to a page where you can download that in a PDF file. So just to outline what I was saying, we can sort of flick round the chart and look, all these 5+ degrees, Pluto, Mars, well, go the other way, Mars, Pluto, and look here, she was born on the weekend where there was an exact conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus, which is an amazing energy anyway. And then also there's Saturn and there's the moon. Now, so interesting. Her own position is 604. So she was just into the next degree, still well within the 1 degree orb, number-wise, just in the next one, which is very interesting. And this is the figure that results. It's absolutely glorious.
You know,
Something that,
I it just struck me, Virgo rising there in this chart.
mm-hmm.
The sign of the maiden.
Yes, yes, and also this axis, Virgo Pisces,
Yeah.
that's currently where where the nodal axis is, and so that's the axis along which the current eclipses have been happening, you know.
Yes.
Um, Another thing that's very interesting here is Saturn and Mars are in an opposition, a very close one. And in terms of traditional astrology, each one of them is debilitated. So the sign of Aries is ruled by Mars, the sign of Libra is ruled by Venus, and having Mars in the sign of Venus and then Saturn in the sign of Mars, that would be said to debilitate these two energies. But if you change them around, you get Mars in Aries, which it rules, and you get Saturn in Libra, which is its sign of exaltation, so called. And I was just amazed when I saw that. So there's another teaching that comes out of this chart for me. It's something about the struggle and the discipline and even the hardship and the hard times and the dedication that can be involved in really working with a relationship, almost in order that the energies can, as it were, change place, which brings out the very best of each of them. So starting out kind of debilitated or detrimented, to use the lingo of traditional astrology, but ending up in very favorable positions. So a
Yes,
transformative, a transformative implication for relationships there.
indeed, because this is a mutual, it's a type of mutual reception, although they're
It
not
is.
domicile, one is exalted. But it again, and of course, it's the first and seventh houses again.
Exactly.
Um, but I think it is her energy again because it's like the softening of the fire, just bringing something cool or soothing to what could be an outright battle, just being able to calm.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Hmm. Yes,
Wanted to show this because, you know, in the ancient tradition of alchemy, all the symbols for all of the elements are triangles. Air and earth have a little bar across one of the points, and water and fire don't. And you can see the upward pointing and the downward pointing. So any one of these symbols fits exactly into the six-pointed star. And the diagram of a six-pointed star was sometimes used as a symbol for the quintessence, which was said to be like the combination of all four elements stepped up to a whole other level, as it were. So the quintessence both contains and also pervades all of the elements. It's a finer substance even than the elements. And that also resonates with the image of Chariklo. Oh, what I did also want to mention is that where we're heading now is up towards a new moon, which will be on the 20th of December. So that's very near. the date of the winter solstice as well, which will be the day after. And it's a very interesting chart as well. It's arbitrarily set for London, so don't pay too much attention to the houses. But there is the new moon, see both sun and moon in the very same degree and minute, flanked by Mars and Venus. So there's two pairs suggesting the combination of the yin and the yang, like the symbol for the Tao, you know. And what's also very nice about this is that the conjunction of Mars and Venus actually progresses through the next month or so. And then I think it's the 9th of January, it's right around there, 9th, 10th of January. They all end up in the very same degree. So not an approximate closeness or conjunction, so bang, in the very same degree. So this theme of the opposites, Mars and Venus, Sun and Moon, is incredibly strong all the way through this period and this month. So for each of us personally, probably a theme of balancing the yin and the yang in our lives with our activities, also inwardly in the soul. Maybe even really balancing dreams will come forth. I've been having a few of those. And there's some further things I want to just point out. So you see, there's wonderful trine in fire. Chiron's involved with all of this, because he's over here in Aries, 22 degrees. And then there's all these fiery planets, mostly around the same area, so late-ish, in Sagittarius, another fire sign. So fire is one of the upward moving elements. It's about vision and inspiration and a certain kind of creative imagination. And I remember thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice if there was something over here in Leo to make a grand trine in fire? And I can't resist going back to the Chariklo chart now. If you recall, she is, I'll just go back for a moment.
Yes, Leo.
So there she is in Leo, earlier on than the main positions in fire now. But you know, the weekend when Chariklo was discovered, I actually was in Cape Town doing a weekend workshop on Chiron. And when I was preparing for it, and I did up the chart, so this was before Chariklo was discovered, okay? And I remember looking at this astounding pattern and thinking, wow, there absolutely needs to be something at about 5 degrees of Leo to complete the chart. So about a week after I got back from that trip, I learned that another centaur had been discovered. And when I learned where she was, my God, there she actually was all that time. And then it took a fair while before the name was confirmed, but just based on what I was feeling and noticing and so forth, the Chariklo type qualities, they were already there, except she didn't have a name, you know. And so I look at all this fire again, and I think, oh, wouldn't it be nice if there was some Leo activity there? And, you know, if there's ever a blank in the chart where you think something should be, That's where the asteroids come in, because you're guaranteed to find at least one asteroid, more like a whole cluster of them, because there are many, many thousands of them now. I can still remember the day when the asteroid numbers were just about going up to 10,000, and I don't even know how many there are, but it's well over 25,000. So you'll find something, although not all of them are named, of course. But here they are with their degree. So Aesculapia, that's like a feminized version of Asclepius, whose mentor was Chiron, the god of healing. Curia Leonis, not sure I'm saying that right. That's amazing because the word itself, cuir, means leather in French. Leonis is of the lion. So, as I understand it, that's like a lion skin. And Q Hercules, because one of his famous labors was to slay the Nemean lion. And he's often portrayed carrying a kind of a mantle or a cloak made of a lion skin. And we know that it was Hercules who accidentally wounded Chiron. It's very much involved with the story of Chiron. And then I had to laugh at this one. I thought, oh, the asteroids are having a little joke with us there because the one called Babel, as in the Tower of Babel, is very close to Trine, the sun, and so forth. And so if we include all those asteroids, they would be up around here, where I put in that star. And then we do have this magnificent grand trine in fire. And that energy, it is already feelable. It's like building up with all this fire. And it's also a kind of a harbinger of the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune to come. Right now, both of them are still in the last bit of Pisces as they prepare to enter Aries in early 2026. And then on the 20th of February, they will make a conjunction in the first degree of Aries, for which the symbol, the Sabian symbol, is a woman rising up with a seal. And there's a wonderful pun there. It's the animal that's being referred to. But a seal is something that confirms something, or like a vow is sealed, or a promise is sealed, or a legal document is sealed. So it's a kind of commitment, which is so beautiful because that's the very first degree of Aries, and that's how the whole zodiac starts, like a commitment to our life, our incarnation process, and so forth. So it's very powerful. Another
Just want to,
feature, oops.
sorry, I'm kind of stuck on that queer leonis,
Yes, oh yes, thank you.
because it's just such a powerful thing that it's just occurred to me, given the times that we live in. So we have this Saturn Neptune conjunction that is moving into Aries, as you've just reminded us, and Aries being about sovereignty and being able to stand on our sovereignty. But at the same time, we have this reference to the slaying of that lion, which
Yes,
is, I think, about the slaying of the ego or the need
yes,
to slay the ego. And then we have Asclepia, which is a reference to healing.
yes,
And we have the Tower of Babel, which could be interpreted, that story, as being about hubris.
yeah, absolutely.
And so here,
Uh,
it's just, given the time that we are in, is this the prescription to get us out of trouble?
Oh, I love that. The other thing is this fascinating word or name, Leonis. In fact, that's the name of a very famous Polish painter and musician. He painted a beautiful set of zodiac paintings. You'll find him on Wikipedia. If you search that name on Wikipedia, it will take you to this extraordinary man who died very young. Um, but that's part of it too. He was obviously deeply gifted in a very fiery way. And I also thought about Babel as in the Tower of Babel, in the sense of words flying everywhere
Yes.
and people not understanding each other.
Exactly. Yes. And I think again, that's the confusion that ensued due to hubris. And I but it's the you're so right, the words flying everywhere and the chaos it creates. And I think, you know, when I was teaching a couple of weeks ago, I was saying to my students that communication can only be successful when we understand that the landscape or the filter that we have in is not the same as someone else's. And so we cannot assume that they know what we are talking about.
Yeah.
They cannot assume that we know what they're talking about. We have to assume that we don't know. And therefore, communication is is successful depending on how how good we are at translating what's inside our heads into something meaningful that can bridge the other person's filter.
Yes, absolutely.
And
No,
so this
that's a really good rule of thumb for communication that's largely centered on the mental level. But if we go Chariklo for a moment, um, or think about this grand trine in fire, then communication between us human beings at another level would be to simply be able to sit quietly together with somebody and absolutely feel that place of unity.
which
And
require which requires the slaying of the lion, the ego.
yes, and sometimes to kind of just leave the Tower of Babel behind for a while,
Yeah.
not worry about the words and the concepts and everything, but to allow the space for some quiet energy, not just inside myself personally and individually, but in connection with others as well. Because, one thing I, I noticed, was watching a video on YouTube the other day with some content that I was really interested in. And about a quarter of the way in, I realized it was an AI voice. And I still watched the whole thing because there was some very interesting stuff in it. And I was completely exhausted at the end of this. And I thought, you know what? Why is that so tiring? I knew it was an AI voice, so I wasn't expecting anything different. And then I thought about it and I realized, oh, the voice just went on and on and on and on and on. There are no silences at all, not even half a second. No silences, no gaps, no pauses at all. And so it's just like almost like a machine. Well, it is a machine in a way. And I just thought, wow, it's like we're being trained in a way to override the silences that can be there inherent in
Yeah.
a conversation or a communication. we're overriding that by more words. Like that's more another version of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And to be able to just sit with somebody and allow those little gaps, in a flowing conversation, even 1 second, it doesn't sound like long, but it's a significant pause in a communication. And, they're falling out of fashion, let's say.
It's so true. It's in those moments, again, this is about connection. So we have that need to let go of the ego in order to make the connection, whether it's in our efforts to translate what's in our minds into words that are going to be understood by the other party, or whether it's by listening or by feeling. An animal communicator, last year, I was talking about, or she was doing, having a little bit of time to communicate with my dog. And I was saying, how can I make communication between us better? And his response to her was, we don't need words. We don't need.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
and it's so very true about us. We don't need words. We read each other very, very.
Mm.
So
But
it's
I guess I would say we do need words, and there's a whole lot more that we can also bring on stream, so
yeah.
to speak.
Wow. Well, Melanie, as ever, you have given us so much to think about and ponder. And as ever, I am always so excited when we've been speaking. And I'm conscious of your time. So I am also going to remind everyone that you do something extremely special at this time of year, which is the 12 Holy Nights. And
Oh, yes.
and perhaps if we could finish sharing, then you can tell everyone about it.
Yeah, I've finished now. Yeah. So the 12 Holy Nights last from 24th, 25th of December for 12 nights, 12 days. Like that famous Christmas song, the 12 days of Christmas, my true love's brought to me, etc. But there is a most marvelous astrological retreat which you can do. Now, the full instructions for that are on my website. So if you go to my website, which is just melanieReinhart.com, on the home page you'll see a menu down the sidebar on the left, and you'll see Zodiac Gallery. Now, if you click on that, well, there is a Zodiac Gallery, and there are links below the Zodiac pictures, which will take you through to a couple of files which have all the information that you would need. But basically, it's a process where, ideally with some preparation, both at the beginning and at the end, you take one sign of the zodiac per day as your focus. Now, the way I was taught it was to start with Capricorn. And although I've tried other things, I always seem to come back to that, because you begin by focusing on the sign which represents, what's already there, what's already been built up. Often that prompts a spontaneous review of the year that's passed, etc. And then the whole process 12 days later ends with Sagittarius looking to the future and the fire and so forth. So, feel free to kind of play around with that, but whichever starting point you choose, see it through. This is a ritual, so it needs to be prepared for and followed through completely and rounded off at the end. So if you know that you won't be able to complete it, wait for another year when you can. In terms of a learning device, you can, of course, take 12 days anytime in the year to help you learn. It's a wonderful way to focus on the signs of the zodiac, which are absolutely fundamental in learning about astrology. And by the way, there's not a time when you know it all about whatever sign. Not you will. It's a lifetime learning process that you will open the door to. But the thing is, doing it at the time of year, which is the Christmas New Year period, this is incredibly special, and the energies of that time of year can't be replicated at any other point seasonally in the year, no matter which hemisphere you're on. Because, and here's something that's so exciting. So the end of the 12 Holy Nights, in the Christian calendar, that's Epiphany. But now, in the astronomical calendar, that is the perihelion of the Earth. That's the point in the year when the Earth is the closest to the Sun, which is amazing. This is a very, very long cycle. I keep forgetting the numbers, but it's huge. Like, I think it's somewhere around 25,000 years. So it doesn't occur for posterity in that very same degree. But at the moment, that perihelion is occurring in the first few days of January. And for our lifetime, that's where it will be. And so the symbolism is so fabulous. The Earth coming to its closest point to the Sun. And of course, in the Northern Hemisphere, that also happens. That's the winter solstice in the north. And yet, at that very point, it's the closest point in the Earth's orbit around the Sun. And what a powerful symbol of the rebirth of the light. And how extraordinary and wonderful that, roughly speaking, that also coincides with the Christian story of the birth of Jesus. And of course, as we know, it's a time of year which has a whole string of ancient festivals behind it. And so all that, as it were, is in the field of the 12 Holy Nights. So typically what I do every year is, after all that's finished, I do a little kind of check-in group, which is for people who've been doing the 12 Holy Nights either themselves alone or maybe with some friends or whatever. But anyway, people who've been through the whole process and then would like to maybe share some of their experience with others who've also been doing that. And you know, I just love the idea. There are people all over the place during the 12 Holy Nights, kind of walking themselves meditatively through the entire zodiac. We may not know who they are or where they are, but they're out there, trust me. I'm by far not the only one doing this. And to me, it brings up an image of like a network of light all around the planet, literally, as people do this. And even the fact that, you know, everybody's in different time zones and so forth. So it's like a rolling network of light is how I experience. And it is for me, it's a wonderful thing to participate in.
Well, I, ever since I discovered it, I've been doing it. So this will be my third year.
Okay.
I adore adore it because
Mm.
it's not just about contemplation. It's something about, it's really hard to express it, but it's something about linking the imagination with feeling and intellect. And it's the synergy
Absolutely.
of the three. And
Yes, absolutely.
it's something that I think as astrologers we are doing all the time anyway. But to have a time that's dedicated to it, it's like being put into a playground with all
Hmm.
sorts of amazing, or into a, being a child who's been given huge canvases and paints to, and just let loose to play. I think that that's the feeling I have with it, and I just love it. So I'm so grateful to you for introducing me to this.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, I was very grateful to the man who introduced me to it. Wonderful astrologer called William Bento, who unfortunately died, I think, in 2017. Um, but it's something I certainly look forward to every year. And what's wonderful, it's kind of like it's like a do-it-yourself ritual, because you can do this even if you have obligations to family, friends, partners, or work, even, with a little bit of planning and good intention, you can find a way to still participate in this. You really can. Um, I've experimented with that down the years, and I've done everything from going full hermit, where I don't read, I don't use the computer, I don't speak, so I have a silent period. And the only thing I do is the 12 Holy Nights. So, and, absolute purist. So I've done everything from that to a really busy Christmas when I was in London and visiting friends, making whole Christmas dinner, having friends round, going to parties, the whole lot. And it was still possible to keep that going. What I would do is that I did pledge not to go to bed too late. So I got up really early in the morning and I had the first 2 hours of my zodiac immersion with my journal and so on and so forth. And it wove in absolutely fine, you know. So
And
don't be put off if you think that you'll be too busy. Because, even a brief check-in, it's almost like once you plug into it, what I discovered is it kind of runs by itself. It's like you plug into the 12 holy nights in the zodiac and it occurs. The first time that happened, I was absolutely enchanted. There was one year I wasn't feeling very well and I didn't have the energy to do what I would normally do, write in my journal and draw pictures and think and, all this Power of Babel stuff. Okay. So I thought, oh, I can't do that. And I thought, well, maybe I just won't. I was feeling a bit kind of weedy and not well and all that. So as the dates got in line, about 2 days in, I began to realize, oh my God, it's actually happening anyway. So, but there were all these little events or things I heard on the radio or thoughts that came into my mind. I thought, oh my God, I'm doing Aquarius now. And I'm not doing anything. Aquarius is happening now. And that would be a really minimalist approach. Um, but anyway, if you do it, I really hope that you have a wonderful time. It brings so many blessings. It really, really does.
It
But
certainly.
if you feel like it, do sign up for the check-in group. I tend to limit the numbers, and so there's a few places left, but do consider that if you like.
Well, I'll be putting a link to all of that in the description box. But just tell everyone what your website is, Melanie.
Yes, so it's just melanieReinhart.com.
And as I say, a link to it will be in the description box. Melanie, a million thank yous for just the most wonderful and inspiring conversation yet again.
Well, thank you so much, Anna. It's always wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you.
And
And
thank you all out there as well in
indeed,
sharing this time for yourself and for us.
very, very precious. I want to thank you all for your support over this year. And I look forward to sharing more wonderful astrology with you throughout the year next year. A link to my own website will be in the description box. If you would like to sign up to my newsletter, that's the place to go. And there's also a link to my Substack. And until next time, have a great week. Goodbye.